Well, it is 2 o'clock. Peter, do you want to jump in? Trey's going to start us out with a little introduction.
Okay.
I will wait just a minute. Well, really, I'll just sit here and pontificate for a bit and allow people to come in as necessary. But want to welcome everyone. This is NUGM 2023. We haven't done this since the early stages of COVID in 2020, so it's been a while so far. Welcome back, everyone. Really excited to kind of kick this off again. This is, of course, virtual. And we're going to be doing like 5 weeks of virtual, skipping over the end of the month for obvious reasons for folks who are busy doing end of the month stuff. And then next spring, we're planning for an actual physical here in Minneapolis. So the Minneapolis event will have lots of information forthcoming. Right now, this is the beginning of virtual NUGM 2023, and welcome everyone. I'm going to introduce Peter Newby and Linda McHenry. And Peter, Linda, Diane will have some stuff to say shortly, but by all means, take it away.
Okay.
Well, before you share, Peter, we'll get into just a few logistics of how this will work because we've got a lot of people on this Zoom call. So we want to make sure that we can let Peter and Linda do their presentation as effectively as possible with the minimum amount of distractions. So what we're going to do as they get started is we're going to mute everyone. You won't be able to unmute yourself. So while you're muted, if you have a technical emergency that comes up or a reason to need to contact us, you will want to send a chat message to myself, or you can send a chat message to anybody who's indicated as a host on here. And as I do that, I'm making a couple of co-hosts. It'll be Novo co-hosts as well as Peter and Linda will be co-hosts as well, so that they will have a little bit of control over their own situation here as well. When everyone is muted during the formal presentation, we also ask that you turn your cameras off during the formal presentation, because that will again help the focus be on the presentation and the presenters and not on any distractions. And then when we get done with the formal presentation part, we will be at the Q&A part. And at that point, we'll leave everybody muted and ask you to use the formal raise hand function that's built into Zoom to raise your hand to ask questions. We'll then call on you in an orderly fashion and ask you to unmute so you can ask your question. You should stay unmuted and don't mute yourself while answering the question and having follow-up, because if you mute yourself again, we'll have to go through the whole process of asking you to unmute during that time. And then when we get through kind of that formal Q&A part, we're going to open it up for people who can stick around and have an open discussion. And then we'll allow everybody to be able to unmute themselves and chat and say hello. A lot of you are new to NUGMs. Many of you have been to in-person and to previous virtual ones, so you know each other. And it's kind of fun at the end of the presentation if we get a few minutes to kind of chat and catch up and further ask questions of our presenters here. So we'll get going. I am going to turn my camera off, and I'm going to make sure I get Peter and Linda here as presenters, and then we'll get everybody set to go. Peter, you are now a co-host. So if you guys need to, you'll have some controls. I'm going to mute everybody. Okay, now we're going to unmute you, Peter. And
No, I did it.
Okay. All right, we should be good.
And so welcome to the Manage 2000 Development Overview. We're sitting here in the Longfellow neighborhood of Minneapolis on a beautiful day. And we're going to just have a little conversation about what's going on in the development and what we've done for the last couple of years, and the things really that that I like, that I'm excited about. Why is it beeping?
Those
are
are
people-
folks coming in.
Yeah.
Those are the late entries.
It's not the doorbell.
Okay,
But
I was
that's
about
the
to get up
doorbell
and
we're gonna turn off for next time so we don't get
Yep,
that distraction. Yeah.
got it. So this is kind of the top level big picture of things that I want to talk about. The first is just a little housekeeping about Manage 2000 development documentation. And then the big chunk I want to talk about is tools, because that's the stuff that I enjoy. And then a lot of that's about interfaces for the last couple of years. And then there's some other features that go back to the beginning of 8.1, which has been 5 or 6 years now. So we've had a lot of annual service packs where 6 is out in the field since April, and we'll be working on 7 for next year. And there's some other stuff, and of course there's some application things, particularly web functions that do various updating, where we've had things that were available for us to develop, or that seemed like they particularly well fit a web technology, as opposed to most of the update functions remaining in the PWS world. So the documentation stuff, what I want to emphasize here is that I'm not going to go through all of the things in 8.1. We used to have like
Jim.
Jim, and do you remember GMC? Do you remember Carnahan?
Oh, yeah.
And he had the overhead projector and like 100 transparencies, and he'd sit there and flip them. Yeah, we're not going to do that. I'm going to pick out the things that I like in particular and that I think are important. And I'm going to refer people to the feature summary, which is something we've kept up for, since 6.5 days. And it's available on your system to the release level that you're at. So if you come up on 8.1 and you're at Service Pack 4, Service Pack 5, and you want to find out more about what's there than what I talk about, you can go and look up feature summary and see it. If you're on an older release and you're looking at saying, well, we want to assess or plan for an upgrade, and we want to know in detail what kind of features may be there that we don't know about, that Peter didn't talk about because he wasn't interested. You can just put a call into the helpline, and we'll get you a PDF of the feature summary at the most current level. There was something else I wanted to talk about there with this, and I'm going to jump off of the PowerPoint and go live theater. Let's see, where do I want to go to? I want to go to here, and this is the main menu, Manage 2000 menu, and I'm going to just go to the web functions. This will take me to the welcome portal somewhere. Here, well, nice and convenient, it's on the screen. You never know when you get multiple screens where things are going to pop up. And we now have these things called See Alsos on the portals. SB6 was where this started happening. The capability to do this actually started in SB5, and it's when we made the documentation available from web browsers. Prior to that, the documentation was always in the EOT viewer, so we couldn't use this feature that was built into the web portals. But now documentation can be set up through a virtual directory, and any browser can go in and look at it, and you can bring up things out of the browser, and it's a little different, and sometimes maybe a little more convenient, sometimes a little less convenient, depending on what you're doing. But it's nice to be like in the web portals and be able to jump into appropriate documentation. And if you get into the feature summary and you're trying to figure out the service pack level stuff, you'll see them noted here, all the little bullets, and these are all SB2 things. There's probably some later, here's some SP4 things. So you can kind of go through if you're at some level of 8.1 and find the incrementals. But if you're from before that, everything in here is something you may want to consider and look at and think about, projects when you upgrade and what you're going to be able to take advantage of. What else did I wanted to go over here and look at customer portal and the C also here in customer portal, you see is looking at just the AR slice of the documentation. And if we come back and we go to the SO portal, now the C also is on the SOP slice of the documentation. So the C alsos in the portal work like everything in the portal is kind of focused on that particular subject matter, and you get, an appropriate part of the information. Okay. Is that all I wanted to talk about?
I think so. That's a woohoo.
Is that a
right?
woohoo? Is that a
I think
woohoo?
so, yeah.
Cool. Well, I could say that if you're like before SP6 and you don't have that see also menu, if you go to doc train from the top menu, then there's a link to the feature summary there. So that's how you would get that. Okay, so now to the fun things.
Okay.
So I want to talk about tools, and I'm going to start out and talk about recent things, and then we may actually go back and talk about some older things. And when I say older, I mean they're 8.1, but 8.1, as I said, has been out for 6-7 years, whatever. A lot of work in the last couple of years has been on interfaces and things like Manage 2000 as a REST consumer and Manage 2000 as a REST provider. And if you know what that means, or you think you know what that means, great. If not, I think maybe it's worthwhile doing a little live theater, and we'll risk trying to give you a concrete picture of what it is when Manage 2000 is a REST consumer or a REST provider, and maybe give you an idea of, why this is valuable, what you would do with it, how it works. So let's jump off, and we're going to go back to PWS main menu, and in here there is in fact a whole section called interface, and it's been there for many releases. And if you look at it, there's a bunch of new stuff at the bottom. So this is where things got sort of documented and organized about some of these new tools features, and tried to leave breadcrumbs for you to investigate it and to get started on it. So there's an application overview about REST and being a consumer and being a provider. But we're not going to read all the details. We're just going to look at things and see what happens. So we're going to get concrete. How's that?
It sounds good.
Okay. So there is a new table master guy out there called REST Services, and his job is to define a REST endpoint so that Manage 2000 knows how to talk to it. And I built this one to go to the National Weather Service. So it's going out into the ether, and it's talking to a government computer somewhere that will give us forecast information. We have to tell it what office, and that's what this parameter is. And if we give it the right setup here, we should be able to test connection, and it should actually talk from Manage 2000 into the internet world and come back with information. Or it's going to get hung up here, which it does sometimes because, okay, it's a live demo. That's why we do these things, because we know we're going to stumble and fall. My viewer gets hung up on something. We'll try this again. Yeah, I know. Oh, I didn't even have to try it again.
Wow.
It was thinking. Okay, so what happened is it went out and it talked to the government computer that said, well, this is the forecast. And what we got back was a JSON object, which is maybe not pretty to the end user, but it's pretty understandable in terms of structure to developer folks, and it comes back and it's got properties of the JSON result, and it's got a periods, which are an array, and then each one of the entries in the array has numbers and names and temperatures and wind speeds. So we're successfully talking out into the world and getting things back. This is maybe an example that you may not want to like really focus on in terms of content, but the mechanics are there to show you, well, this is how this works. Maybe you want to go more interest in a third-party logistics sort of thing where you're trying to track supply chain events and times and what's going where when. Maybe it's an internal problem, like you have the ability to publish a REST service from an internal system, like an MES system, a manufacturing execution system, and I just happen to have one that I call 502, and of course I don't have an MES system, but I do have an MES REST interface because I built this and I can test going out to it, and this would be an example of doing something internally within your system, and we see that it got an okay, and we see we got back status of the work order that I just make up out of thin air, and then some information that actually I steal from the WP file. But the point is that you can point things at endpoints and you can get data back if you understand what you need to ask and how you need to ask it. Well, what do you do with this stuff after you get it back? Let's close that. Let's come back here, and I want to look at news articles and weather, and let's take that NWS guy and see what I'm doing with him. And this is saying I've got a REST news source. It's going to run this code behind subroutine REST news, which is standard, and it just knows how to run REST services and pass in parameters. And here I'm passing in a parameter which is maybe a little bit more detailed than people used to. It's the last key, but then it has an expression after the last key. And this is something I want to talk more about in a minute, but we're actually passing in a little bit more information to get what we want. And I've got a template here, and I just want to show this template. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And the point of this guy is not to make sure everybody knows how to read HTML, but I just want to show that it is not all that complex. It's not a lot of programming. It really is a template, and it has some replacement things in it. It in fact has these replacement things, which are sort of interesting. This is a JPath expression, which is kind of like XPath, and it's saying, I'm going to get a JSON object back, and I want you to go to that properties, and I want you to go to the array periods, and I want you to pull out the first 6 elements and give me the name. So I'm going to end up with a multi-value for these things, and then it's going to spread them out and give me 6 rows. So and if we go to the newsreader, we should be able to find this guy, customer news and weather, and there he is. So we're without doing a lot of software development, we're putting a template together, and we're saying go to this REST service, get that information, display it, and put it somewhere in the Manage 2000 world.
So that's a big woohoo.
Is that a big woohoo?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here for moral support. I just want everyone to know I'm not going to talk a lot, but I'm here for moral support. So.
And I so appreciate that. There are lots of other things that we could talk about with the news articles. We're actually, in 2 weeks, you're going to come back and we're going to do portals and tailoring portals.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about how we take some of these information, like from news articles, and get them to portals and so forth. But like we could talk for hours. I could talk for hours about this stuff, but we don't have hours today. So I'm going to let that go and just say there's lots more about being a Rust consumer. In May, Maybe
Yes.
we're hoping that when we get together in May, like I'll get a whole hour to talk about some of these topics, and Rust Consumer is certainly one, the news articles and the feeds and so forth.
And I will have chocolate because I didn't bring chocolate today, knowing it would just be mean to tempt people with something they couldn't have.
Oh,
So
Peter, in May, you can have as many
In
hours as
May.
you want.
yes.
yes.
And it will, yeah.
Okay, so that's sort of the concrete example of being a Rust consumer. Manage 2000 is going to some Rust endpoint that somebody else is supplying. Maybe it's an internal system, maybe it's a 3PL supply chain place, maybe it's a some public service somewhere. But it goes and it gets information, and then it presents information to people. There's a whole branch of that that goes into the MSO system, and I'm not going to talk about that, and a number of other things that I'm not going to talk about because there's just too much stuff. So next thing is a Rust provider. Okay, so this is we're going to turn the tables here and say, well, instead of Manage 2000 going out and consuming something that somebody else is doing in terms of getting some JSON stuff together for it, what can I be somewhere else and talk to Manage 2000, and what can I get out of it through a REST interface? So let's go look at that. Back here, oh, that's my web world. Let's get back to the PWS world. And on this interface menu under the REST API, there's a thing called M2K REST Services. And I'm going to click on that. And that's actually going to take me off the Manage 2000 box, and it's going to put me in a web page that is Postman. So we went to Documenter Get Postman. And what I've got here is the documentation for how you would use a REST service interface to talk to Manage 2000.
We'll say what Postman is real quick.
Well, Postman is interesting. It's a place for developers to go to test out, to define interfaces and test them out, and also to document them. And in fact, while you're documenting them, you build test cases and you test it, so you know that it actually works. And so the documentation comes right off of those test cycles. And I just love it. I think it's a fantastic thing. You can set up. Well, first off, this just looks like documentation. And it's interesting. It's got these places where you can change what the examples are. So I can look at the examples and I can see them as if they're a curl example. I can look at them in jQuery. Whatever your environment is that you are going to work in, you can get an example and copy and paste out of here to start building something somewhere else. But you don't use Postman really as an application. You use it as a development tool because you're making an application for people to use. It's got this really enticing bright orange button over here. It says Run in Postman. So I thought this was documentation. You click on it and it says, well, Postman on your desktop or Postman in the web. I'm going to choose web just because. And we'll see if it's talking to me. Import collection. Well, okay. I've got a sandbox area that I set up to do playing in my sandbox. And now it just imported that, well, what looked like documentation, but actually has a whole series of definitions of environments and test examples to try out. And I can, for instance, go into environment. I wonder if I don't know if I can. Yeah, I'm going to just duplicate that. And I've got a copy of it. And let's rename this and say, that's going to go to my lab account. And here is where I'm going to make it go to my lab account. So I've got variables that are used throughout the test cycles. So, and I'm going to select this. Okay, I've got a couple of different environments. So this is my active environment right now.
So you've got some Rust stuff in your Peter account and you're gonna go use that.
Correct.
You're testing that now.
I'm testing that now. I'm going to go to our development server, and I'm going to go to my website on that development server, which is serving my lab account on the HP4. And if you're going to do this back home, I mean, you're going to change that to your, obviously your web server and how you get to your account. But that should go to my account. And if I go back to collections and I look at like the authentication services, I can do a login CID. Login CIDs are like our auth token things. And this is my login information, terribly complex password, I know. And if I throw my information at it, then it gives me an auth token.
Because you built something that knows how to do that for you.
Well, that's what this service does.
Okay.
It allows you to get an auth token from a login password. And now I'm going to jump back to my environment, and I'm going to paste that in here. And now all of the services in here are going to use this auth token.
Yeah.
So let's jump down and look at primary key selection and say, I want to get the keys from an index. So I can go, this example says, hey, use the CM file and use the $name index and use this start key and that end key and pull me back the keys that I'm interested in, all the foreign keys that go with that. And there we go. So 127 milliseconds, and I've got my keys and I can go do other things with them, get other data, whatever. But you can see this is all mostly building blocks for developers to use. And I think the important thing about it is that it is docked. So like I've tried to write in things here, if you go back, that give you ideas about how you do this and what each section is for and how you use it. And so there's kind of a big space to explore there for development folks. And Postman's just a great way to go explore that stuff. Okay, well, time's flying. Does that make sense? Is there more?
Are you going to show the Manage 2000 side of how all that REST stuff got built, or is that for another day?
That I think is for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be another whole session. And again, yeah, I'll probably do a session on consumers, a session on this stuff. I actually have another, I don't know, maybe 10 more. There's like 50. There's about 50 services here that are building block services, and I've got some more. There's a whole shopping cart service area, by the way. This was we built a shopping cart app in the web function, but these are the primitive pieces that go into shopping cart operations with the there's a file called shopping cart in Manage 2000, and if you want to interact with that and build your own front end to it, you could drive it through, REST service calls. And
these are all examples that are part of the 8.1 release now?
These are all part of the 8.1 release. They're actually in Service Pack 6. Okay. So anybody who's come up since April on Service Pack 6 actually has this stuff and can look at it. Some of these things existed previously, but they weren't well docked, and they not, there was like 15 of them or 20 of them. There weren't 50 of them. So this has really gotten built out. Woohoo! Woohoo! So that is what it means to be a REST consumer for Manage 2000 and what it means to be a REST provider for Manage 2000.
So totally unrelated to retirement resting.
Yeah, or taking a nap, which is maybe closer to my docket. So yeah, cool. Text messaging, gosh, moving right along. Let's go back here and get back to interfaces and talk about texting. Texting has a couple different branches to it. And again, I tried to put information in here about things that you may want to think about as you get started with this. There is actually a place called Texting Services, which is what got me started on REST services. I wrote this one first, and it's special case about texting and text message services. But there's things like Twilio and Nexmo. Nexmo is called something else now, but their life cycles are very fast, by the way. So if you go that route, you probably are going to be doing maintenance every 6 months because they're going to change how they do something. But there's a texting services thing to set up and talk to them. But you can also do text messaging through what are called gateways. So if you have phones that your company issues to your employees, and you control who the provider is, and you say, well, they all go through T-Mobile, and we know who they are, and they're not going to change, and they're not going to change the number. You can actually send emails to a particular place, and T-Mobile, for instance, all the providers do this, will take that input and convert it to a text message and route it to that phone.
No way.
And they don't charge you for it. So, that's a pretty attractive thing. It doesn't work, if you're going to send text messages to your customers, for instance, and they go out and swap phones, and now everything's broken. So then you want to look at a text messaging services, because they're going to solve that problem for you. Let's see, let's go back here and talk about the texting services. I'm just going to look at this quickly. It's just a table that says, here's how we talk to Twilio, or here's how we talk to Nexmo. But I'm not going to spend too much time with that today. The other part of it is really just in phone carriers. We have these addresses, and this is the extension, the domain where you put a phone number in front of this, like my cell phone number, and tumomail.net. And if I email to that, it just takes it in, converts it to a text messages, and routes it to whatever phone number I gave it. So the problem is you need to have these addresses there, and when you are sending something, Manage 2000 needs to know, what carrier to take. And so if we go look at contacts, and let's use me. There I am.
Oh, there you are.
We have images and image rotators and screen build, by the way. So somebody took this and dropped it on one of their custom item screens, and so they get visual images of their parts as people are working on things. So they're never confused about what it is they're working on. They can see it, which I haven't put this into items. It's in facilities and contacts and sysusers, and it's mostly people faces in standard system, but you can put it other places if you want. But let's look at my email address and my telephone number. And when you send an ECA, you don't really say how you want it sent. You say, well, I'll send it to this contact in the normal way, and whatever that means. Well, the normal way means look for an email that's a default and email it to them. And if you can't do that, look for a fax that is a default and fax it to them. Well, what we're going to do with text messaging is say, let's go forward. I need to know the carrier, so I get that gateway, and it's my default phone number. And if I put those two things in there, now Manage 2000 knows how to send me a text message by that gateway. Wow. Believe it or not.
I have to see it to believe it.
Well, I can show you. So I think I've got a phone around here. Do I have it? Yep, there it is. There's my phone, and let's go to something that I can change. Let me just show you this an ECA build, so you know what I'm doing. So if we change the engineering status in the IPL file, then this gets sent, and it's got a subject, and it's got a whole bunch of junk in the body. And now let's go to 3, and we'll say, what we're going to do when this happens is we're going to tell Actions tell, and it's a notify to contact PMN, but it doesn't really say how to do it. And that's what I'm saying. You know, a normal means however the default settings are set up there in contacts. And that's why we're gonna, did I go, I didn't go show that in contacts, did I? Let's look in contacts too, back here, because there's a couple of screens here that probably nobody uses. They're the ECA default method and ECA event override screens. And this is where you can change what normal means, okay? So I'm going to say on the engineering status change ECA, what normal means is send me the text message, just the subject to my text message destination, and email me the whole thing. So if you had a large ECA result, you wouldn't like trying to run it all to the person's phone. You're just going to take the top. You can just make this text message if you know the ECA and you know it's not going to be big. You could send individual ones. And again, you could send it like to this person. You could always do it that way by changing the default method, or you can pick and choose.
All right,
well,
let's see it work here.
You're still waiting for it to work. Okay, so let's go in and say we're on part 101 and the engineering status is active, but we got a pending change coming and we're going to end out of that and go on with life. And we'll see if anything works because it's a live demo. This is live theater.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Something popped up on your phone.
Oh my.
You have a message.
What do I have?
I don't know. Oh my goodness. You've got weird stuff.
I've got a lot of weird stuff. Why do I have all that weird stuff?
I don't know, but I'm just impressed you got a message.
I was playing with it and I probably changed it somewhere.
Well, it would be that top one, right?
Yep.
And that's the one you were looking at with the weird stuff.
Yeah, this is the full body.
Yep.
And that isn't what I thought I asked it to do.
Well, that's okay.
So I'm not going to solve that in a presentation session.
No, but something happened.
But Manage 2000 is texting messages to phones. So ECAs now can go to anyone, in their hip pocket anytime. And I think that's a woo-woo.
I think that's a big woo-woo. Okay. Yeah. That would be chocolate if I had some.
Well.
Too bad for you.
Too bad for me. USPS Zip +4. This is an interesting one that I got into when I was working on Vertex for a customer. And let's go back here and get back into interfaces. And again, if you go in here, you kind of get, application overview, blah, blah, and an implementation. Here's all the steps to go through to do that. That's the Vertex stuff. I wanted to look at the Zip +4. Here it is, USPS. So the US Postal System runs a web service. This is not a REST service. This is a SOAP service, so it's a little more complicated to talk to. But you can open an account with them and they'll give you a login ID, and then they will provide services like if you give them an address, they will tell you what the real 5+4 zip code is. And in fact, what they keep as the official city name and so on and so forth.
So let's see that work.
You want to see that work?
Too much talking.
Too much talking. Well, there's a new thing in SC Constants that says, hey, I've got an interface to talk to USPS. I applied to get our account. You would have to do this. You'd have to apply and get in the password. I've got this turned off at the global level, so it is not, by default, it's going to be off.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go into USPS Constants, and this looks pretty much the same. And what it is it's the local account version of the USPS Constants. And now I can turn it on just for this one account.
Okay.
There's some other switches here that are interesting in terms of what it's going to do. Is it actually going to update the zip? Is it actually going to update the city? I wouldn't advise updating the address because what they do with the address and what Manage 2000 does with the address are a little bit different. But we've just turned it on, and let's look at something. I'm going to stick with my where I expect to be.
Well, you did have 4 9s. Did you want 4 9s?
I thought I did.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, what I'm interested in here is that it's a 4-digit zip code. It's a upper and lower Minneapolis, and so on.
Okay.
So let's go back, and we're going to run customers, and customer just knows if that switch is turned on to watch for things. So
Oh,
so we're going to put in 9999, and we're going to go into name and address, and we can see
yeah, it's still 5.
still 5. And if we end out of here, it will tell us that an error has occurred. Please contact system administrator. Yeah,
Oh, did you forget to turn something on?
I don't know. Let's try.
Okay.
Okay, five digits, upper and lower. No.
It's an error from your UPS guy. So do you need to have something turned on to run that web service? This is the part where you don't get chocolate.
I'm just going to do an I.T because
Okay.
I changed system contents and I didn't log in and log out.
Okay.
So we'll just see if it's that kind of silliness.
Okay, because I'm timing you now.
Oh,
You
damn.
got 15 minutes.
Damn. Okay, so let's go back to this guy and see
Okay.
how he's doing.
Still 5. Well, sad.
That's very sad. Okay, so live theater failed.
But that makes it a true demo.
Okay, I'm not going to
We are genuine.
pursue that, but
I've seen it work in testing. I can testify to that.
yeah. But the idea is that you can go along and get your
and it will automatically, when you end out of customers, it will
just
update that with
right.
the extra 4 digits.
Right,
Yeah.
and that makes delivery more accurate. But it also means, like, if you do have an interface with something like Vertex, that your zip code addresses are more specific, and so your
taxing
stuff will be more accurate as well.
Yeah. Anyway, 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Go.
God. Well, we already talked about these things, and I'm not going to recap. You can look over the presentation on your own if you want to. But these are the things that we did, and those are the results we got. And here.
And here you. Okay, watch.
Oh,
gosh, it works.
Yeah, PowerPoint.
Woohoo!
Okay.
It always works in PowerPoint.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah.
But what's the fun in that?
Okay.
So other things in tools that I think are important, we can do MSOs and web functions. This goes back to SP3, and
we might do examples on our next.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
if you come sit in 2 weeks from now, we'll go over this and how that works and what it means. This is the variable replacement that we saw in the news article, and this works now in SP7. They'll come out next year. This will be global to any MSO thing that you do. So it really expands the parameter availability.
And tell them explain how it works real quick.
So the last key CM, pretty much all the technical folks know, that's going to give you like the CM key. this is in Unibasic, you have these expressions that are calculate expressions. And I've got in the calculate expressions, I've got a file and a dictionary specification. So it's not exactly like a calculate. A calculate would just have the dictionary. But it will take that last key and it will get the record for the CM, and it will then
Bring back that field.
figure that
Yeah,
out, whether that's a field or
Or an
an I
descriptor.
descriptor.
Yep, okay,
So it's a pretty powerful way of expressing, I want this data related to that key.
very good.
Up arrows, some people get really excited about up arrows because if you hit the up arrow key, it's one keystroke. And if you hit \LK return, it's 4 keystrokes. But in all of this moving around stuff that I've been doing, if I go into customers and I
Yeah, you got excited and didn't take the S.
really, okay, if I go in and I just tap my up arrow, I get the last key that I was on. So it's quicker. And if I tap it again, I go my
The
key before that.
Oh,
So I actually have a stack
oh my
here.
gosh, look
I
at
have a
that.
bunch of them. If you do a !8, you get a picture of it. So these are all customers that I've used, and they're all in that up arrow stack. The up arrows worked on the web for a while, and now I think it's going to be Service Pack 7. It might work in Service Pack 6. I don't remember if got into 6 or not. But in 6 or 7, the up arrow is going to be the same throughout web and PWS, that it gives you the stack of previous entries.
You know, now after 25 years, I have to retrain myself not to use \LK.
You can if you want to. I still type top and end all the time instead of hitting F2 and F3.
Okay.
There are lots of other things in 8.1 that are previous. When I first did this idea of a presentation, I was thinking, recent things that I've never talked about before. But then as I started rehearsing for this, I started thinking about, there's lots of people who are not on 8.1 and who don't have PDF print integrated into Manage 2000, who don't have attachments everywhere, who don't have the Power BI integration stuff from Jason. What is it? Jason Package Mate. So I thought we ought to stop and just talk about those a little bit. But I mean, if you're in here, do I want to do that? How many minutes do I have?
Well,
I've got 3 minutes until question and answer. Yeah. Let's just look at customers, and we'll look at 1024, and we'll look at attachments, and we'll look at statements. And here are statements that we have come up with just as we've run statements. It's converted to a PDF, grabbed it, and linked it to the customer that it belonged to. And it just did that automatically. I didn't do anything other than run, statements. And we say, I want to look at that. Where is it? Is it on a, no, here it comes. And so now I've got linked PDF attachments that are built into my customers. I can also do here, and I can see my attachments, and I can see my statements, and here they are again. So from wherever, I can look at attachments that were generated out of the PDF generator and automatically attached into Manage 2000, and ongoing. I don't do anything. That's just the way it works once you get it all set up. So that was important. Attachments everywhere, PDF printing, Google Mapping integration. I don't know how much this is interesting, how many people do this, but if you're in here and you go like to truck routing, there's a thing in Manage 2000 for truck routes, and here's a route for Minnesota, and here's my route stops, and the map is coming from Google, but these pins are coming from Manage 2000. So here I've got my information. If I got a phone, it'll link me to a phone. So like if your fleet has Wi-Fi, you know, they can actually click on these things, talk to the next stop, say, hey, I'm going to be there in about 19 minutes. And oh, by the way, here's how I have to drive that. So,
That's a woohoo.
is that a woohoo?
I think so.
Okay. Well, for people who have their own fleets, I think it's really useful. I don't know how many people that is, but there are other mapping things too. There's like you know, where are all the ship tos for this customer and things like that.
Okay, power wrap up.
Power wrap up. Well, there's so much more.
I know.
So I don't think I can go through the Power BI integration stuff at this point. I know what I can do. I can just go back and see news reader news.
Up, the pressure's on. You're making typos.
Newsreader.
Yay.
Hey. These are RSS feeds, by the way, so I could be looking at them in a browser RSS feed or in Outlook or in whatever. But on Manage 2000 site, there is a newsreader for consuming this, and it shows, you know, what scope to who. So this is what I'm scoped to. And here's Power BI CRPRT. So the information from the CRPRT file got, did that not sign me in?
I don't know. There we go.
Okay, there's a bookings report. I really wanted to
Isn't
check.
that pretty?
Is that pretty?
Oh,
I
yeah.
color matched it to
Did
the
you?
end. Didn't see that.
Oh, look at that.
So Blaine had this thing that he brought back from Carter Day. He had a lot of CRP stuff in, I don't remember what the particular thing was that led to this, but I thought it would be interesting to do JSON package mate and grab the CRP-RT information and put it into Power BI, and then you can come back and consume it. They have a client, and you can go look at this in, you know, Power BI's phone interface or in their web interface or whatever. But you can also drop it here in Newsreader, and now in Manage 2000, I've got all of the interactivity that I would get from Power BI. So if I want to know about the impact of the 121 here, I can see it's all happening now, and it's a big chunk of what's going to hit my work centers here.
Mhm.
It's not going to affect Work Center 100, but the rest of these guys are going to get overloaded in this section. Or I could focus on Work Center 100 and say, well, what's really going to affect that? And say,
Ooh.
hey, we're going pretty good through here, and then we're going to have some load leveling we need to do. So the ability to, you know, Power BI is just this really marvelous tool to do things with for visualizations. And you could use it separately, or you could incorporate it into, you know, the Manage 2000 world of, okay, my person doesn't have to go somewhere else. They can get it out of, you know, one place, one stop shop.
So lots of very cool new stuff in 8.1, like Christmas.
Lots of new stuff. Is that?
No, Diane will probably take care of that. So how are we doing? We didn't even talk about applications.
Oh
my gosh.
So there are a bunch of these. I'm just going to go really fast and say.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. So we're working on this one, hopefully in SB7, the whole purchase approval system through ECA approval routings is going to flow through, and you can come here instead of ECA transactions to do your approvals, and it's a little nicer.
Cool.
And if you want to do your credit in the web, Approve Credit does pretty much what credit does. You can do a bunch of them at once. You can do one at a time. There's count entry, which Mary Jo came back and straightened me out on how you really should write this, and I rewrote it. And then adjust. There's a lot of inventory, unplanned move. All those are kind of ADI things that we wrapped up with web interfaces, so you can do them. There's about, I don't know, 15 or 20 web functions now that you can
do updates,
do some kind of updating into Manage 2000. These are new little things and very specialized, the retail delivery fee and surcharge, extra charges. And these are features that are really based on the functionality of extra charges, but they allow you to kind of cope with some of, I don't know if it's Colorado or California. Somebody passed some laws for, if you're doing retail delivery, you've got to track this and give them a report and stuff. And so if you have to deal with that nonsense, there's some functionality built into that now, and constants and customers and a report and blah, blah. So.
Yeah. Zoom, zoom.
And there's, like I say, there's lots of other application stuff. And if you go to that feature summary and you look in there at the area of the product you're interested in, you'll find the details on features. And you can come back and ask. You can suggest topics for May if you want to.
Very good.
So we'll be putting that together, and hopefully I'll get back together then. I think I better shut up now and start questions.
Yeah,
ready
let's
to see
start
if anyone
questions.
has a question. What I failed to mention in the introduction is that the way to raise your hand in a Zoom session like this is to go to the bottom bar. You might have to scroll your mouse down to the bottom of your screen if you can't see it right now. And a bar should pop up with a bunch of tools. And one of those tools is reactions. You want to click on reactions and not the arrow, not the caret, but the smiley face itself. And that will then raise a hand. Open up a little window where you can choose to raise your hand. I see Joanne has your hand raised. You can unmute yourself though, Joanne.
So Peter, my question is, where you did the last keys where you automatically save 10, is that configurable?
It is not at this point. It just is hard coded to 10.
Does it save it in the user prompt stack or somewhere else?
It saves it in the user context file. So, when we made the last keys work on the web, we had to move it from just a common storage and session to actually a physical serialized file. And it's called user context. And it has all the last key information, but it also has some other things in it. And there's an attribute that has most recently used.
If I have it already set up to save 20 in the last key, in the \PMT, which one wins?
Well, in the MRU and the user context, there will be 10. If you go to a function like a PWS function and you do a !8, you may find all of them there.
Okay. All right. I was just curious. Thank you. It's nice.
Thank you.
I don't have to set up all those \PMTs anymore.
Yeah, and that's the up arrow guy just automatically works anywhere that last keys works. So.
Questions? Down to this reactions button, the smiley face, click on it, and then hit the raise hand button. Yoeldis. And you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, Peter.
Hey,
I have
Yoeldis.
a question. How you doing?
Good.
I have a question about the Power BI.
Yeah.
This integration is Power BI is consuming the data directly to M2K, to Unidata.
Yeah. Here, let me.
It's gonna share again.
Yeah, let me come back here and go to well, what do I want to show? So JSON package mate, and I've got just randomly assigned stuff. Here is a CRP planned, and it looks just like a kind of a uniquery paragraph select thing that says, hey, take these records however you want to select them, and here are the fields and or sets that you want to pass in the JSON package. And up at the top, I don't know if I can make that a little bit smaller because I've got things coming in up at the top. There's a shortcuts guy that says testing utility. And if I go to the testing utility and I go to the JSON package and I last key that guy and get him, it went out and built that particular JSON package, and I can copy it. And this is one of the things that has broken recently for me, is that should copy and tell me it copied. It just selects it and it doesn't actually copy it. So I got to figure out what that is. But if you're in Power BI, this would have been a better demo if I'd started that ahead of time.
Yeah, that startup's not your fault. That's Microsoft.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But talk it through.
So in here, there's a wizard. It's the same wizard in Power BI as in Excel. And it's going to start up here and take me into the wizard. Yeah, I know those are uncertified. I don't care. Get data from another source. Uncertified connectors. I don't care. Are you going to go away?
If you click OK, it will.
Okay. And it's supposed to pop the wizard. Oh, there it is. And we can do a get data. Get data is the wizard that's like gets data. And if you get down to the right grouping, you'll find one that says web. I just want to pull in data from the web. And then you say, where on the web? And here we're going to just paste in what we took out of that tester. And it's going to go out there and get the data and analyze it and type it and do all kinds of magic.
Cool.
And now we have we'll end up with a data set in get data, and we can save it into the Power BI world, and it can be a data set for driving visualizations. And one of the things you can do with visualizations is export them to embed them in other applications, and that's how I got it back to the news feed. But here, there it is. So it went out to Manage 2000, got the data, figured out what it was, typed it. And now we can close it out of the wizard, and it's going to go do that all again and make it a data set in Power BI's world. So that's how that works. If you poke around, you'll find where the file export embed in some other place, and you'll get an iframe address that you can put in news reader and get it local over there.
A lot of magic.
That's how that works.
You all this, I'll ask you to unmute
Yes.
again in case you want to follow up.
Yeah, no, that's good, Peter. That's good. That's very good. I have another question about, remember we play with the REST service? Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh,
You're talking about a web service or a REST service?
The REST service, as a provider. Remember when I working in this approval process for the requisition?
Yeah, that's what got me started on that.
So I had this get back, but remember when I use that provider, I get the request back from a web service for the web. Is get the answer back in the browser.
Oh yeah, yep.
So do you fix that, or this is still working in that way?
It still works that way.
Okay, so I need to create a page there.
Yeah.
So for the okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Chris, you have a question, right? I'll have you unmute.
Yes, it was back on the Power BI stuff. I remember, I think I asked this question, I don't know where I saw it last, but licensing, don't you have to have a Power BI license tied to the user in order to access or use that?
You have to have a license to develop the models, I think, and then it can be consumed. The visualization can be consumed by people who aren't licensed, but the development and maintenance of the model and the visualizations requires, yeah, a license.
Thanks, Chris. Other questions, comments? accolades for Peter?
Woohoo.
Way to go, Peter. If I had chocolate, I'd give you some too.
Oh, man.
I actually have
And
a
you-
piece. I have
you
a
know how
piece for him.
Yeah, you know how seldom that happens, so.
Well, I thought the interfaces stuff was absolutely fabulous, of course. Now, yes, it's raw, and developers should get excited, and people who aren't developers, you should be excited too, because that means that your development staff has a whole new tool set and a whole new foundation where a whole 21st century world of interaction awaits.
Yeah, and we looked at like 4 interface pieces, and there's, there were a dozen above that that have always been there that are other things. The iConnect and iBridge interface are still out there for doing those kinds of things. There's interesting master agent opportunities out there. There's just a lot of, I think I did a session one year about all the different ways you can like get things in and out of Manage 2000, because the old rap on multi-value used to be that, hey, it doesn't talk to anything else, it's a silo. And there are just so many different ways of getting information in and out and doing different connections.
Well, come to find out, the rest of the world came our way. Anyone who looks without too much trouble at a JSON package recognizes immediately that it is at least 3 multi-valued dimensions deep
Yes.
in most cases. And
Yeah.
that's what your REST state interactions are essentially presenting.
Yeah, the mapping from JSON to multi-value is really it's amazingly powerful. It's a godsend compared to flattening everything out and reorganizing it and reassigning parents and children and all that.
Well, I have a lot of interest in that. Going forward, everybody's providing a REST state endpoint. Now, not everybody has a REST state endpoint that you can interact with. They're usually, oh, here, consume some data or pull some data, get some data.
Yeah.
But more and more you're seeing interface circumstances where you can actually have interactive updates. And those are the ones that are going to be the most exciting going into the next generation, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I didn't talk about part of the REST stuff. Like what I was showing is what you do through just templating things and setting up tables. But there's actually a program called REST service, just like web service. And the REST service subroutine, you can load that table master of the REST service definition up, and then you can override things, and then you can call REST service the subroutine, and it will do all of the low-level work through the UDO extensions, and you just get back, what we were seeing in the testers. Here the status is good. Here's your package. Go tear it apart and do whatever you want to do. But that also means you can not only go consume information, but I mean, you could be posting in processing requests, right? You could be in the middle of something in Manage 2000, and you could be pushing a processing request to a REST service endpoint that then processes something for you. That starts becoming, sort of custom development that you're going to be rolling up your sleeves and coding, but the infrastructure is there to do that.
Well, I think, the first thing that comes to my mind is, of course, field service and a dispatch list. If you want immediate dispatching, well, suddenly you have a facility to provide that.
Yeah.
I think it's just marvelous.
Cool.
Well, unless there's other direct questions about this particular session and topic, we can open it up. You're ready.
Yeah, the one concern I have did I get too geeky? I was all worried about geeking out, and
It was pretty geeky.
I get excited about these things.
Well, I loved it, so the answer is probably yes.